Season 5, Episode 14. Happy New Year, Clough.
Happy New Year. So this is our fifth Happy New Year together.
Yes, yeah, I guess it is. I don't know if we've ever podcasted on New Year's Day, though. I think this is the first time that this is happening.
I don't remember. We should have researched that ahead of time.
Oh, yeah, right. That's funny. Not happening.
Not happening, no.
So how did you guys ring in the new year?
Movies. Everyone picks a movie. We stay up to watch the ball drop somewhere. Karen and I have some sparkling wine. The kids, the last couple of years, we've picked them up some de-alcoholized or not non-alcoholized sparkling sort of cider. So they had their thing. In the past, so we did the movie. Okay, so we did the movies. We also have decided that fried chicken is a good idea on New Year's. So we did Popeyes this year. Delicious, excellent choice. And we also got some cheesecake from a place called Supermoon, which Japanese cheesecake. To me, it just tasted like good cheesecake. Yeah, but I don't chase the cheesecake. But it's a very good cheesecake. And then 12:02, I was asleep. that's it was that tight. Actually, the movie list from yesterday was in order of watching. We watched Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I always mix this up. Is it Batman v Superman or is it Superman v Batman? So I watched that one, which was like 2.5 hours. That was a big one. And then we watched White House Down.
Oh, who picked that one?
Karen.
Nice.
It was. I will tell you that, so I don't know when that is. I'd have to do a quick search. 2013, maybe. I got to check that out. When White House Down. Hey Siri,
do your research.
What year did White House Down come out?
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
What year did White House Down come out?
Which one?
Yeah. 2000.
That's what I figured.
Thanks, Siri. Go back to sleep. So it's 2013. And sometimes, one of the things we notice, because in the past once and a half, we watched Die Hard. That movie has not aged well. It has not aged well. The whole staff party. There's a whole lot of kind of misogynistic, hypersexualized, lots of F-bombs. Like, it's just very much the epitome of late 80s action hero, right? Yet still holds a place in people's hearts as like, that's a Christmas movie. But White House Down, the jokes are on point. The kind of like it aged well for like an 8-year-old action movie. Channing Tatum, endearing. Jamie Foxx, the president. Whole lot of sort of like other actors that I recognize as being bad guys in other series since then. Like, there's just recognizable sort of B-list actors that they pop up in these movies where there's got to be a bad guy that loves guns and is hyper aggressive. So we watched that. That was the third movie. And then the fourth movie, Maddie picked, we watched Doctor Strange. That's a really good movie. Some of the Marvel stuff. Last year it was all Marvel. We watched last year. Doctor Strange is a really good movie. There's a lot of really nice parts to it. And it's funny because we watched the DC movie and a Marvel movie in the same night. DC and Marvel do humor very differently. Very differently. DC's humor really is about like pointed, kind of angry sarcasm. Like, it's not very kind. Marvel is a lot more self-effacing in its comedy. And even the bad guys, the villain in Marvel movies, have lines of just kind of, I would say, joyful humor. Like they just manage. It's kind of like part of their brand. So we started, I guess, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So and um, started watching the movies, doing other stuff too. I mean, people grab showers. We did a little bit of cleanup around the house, taking care of a few things. But we always coming back to the family room to watch the next movie. And then so we finished up at about 11:25, and then people kind of got their pajamas on. I sort of went and did my sort of evening routine. I come back down at about 11:45. Um, Ryan Seacrest is on TV. It's funny. Maybe everything now happens after midnight, but like that's a whole lot of lameness. Only because Seacrest and his co-host just walking through the crowd, constantly doing pump up kind of like conversations. Like it just felt like a big waste of 30 minutes. And then they're talking about how after midnight all these acts are coming on. I'm like, well, 12:02, bro. I'm hitting the sack. So ball hit the ground, kiss, 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 kiss around the family, hugs, and I'm just like, see ya. And I went to bed. I'm out. They were still kind of messing around downstairs. I could hear the kids settling. Like I think I was no, I was still awake when Karen crashed, but yeah. But I was out. I was asleep by 12:15 easily. How about you? And I will tell you, here's the thing I will say. That is my ideal New Year's Eve. Like yesterday, as far as a New Year's Eve, hanging with the fam in my own house. I can use my own bathroom. I get all the snacks that I want. I just realized how not me. Here's what happened. I'm sitting there, I'm watching this Batman v Superman, Superman v Batman, and I'm thinking to myself, how did I not know when I was a kid or younger and I was jonesing to sort of be kind of out there doing the whole buying a ticket to see a band, to do the everything that was sort of like that going out thing. And I realized like that's not really my personality. Like I'm far more introverted. I think we maybe talked about this a little bit last week. Just the whole like I don't crave those big crowd things. So this isn't about. It's not as much. There's elements of the pandemic that work very well with my personality, and this sort of reminder, as I'm sitting there, checking my Twitter feed, writing a little bit of poetry, and thinking about having another Popeye's chicken leg, right? An hour after dinner. Like, what am I gonna have for a snack? Like, it's funny. Like this, I wish I had discovered this type of a New Year's Eve long before now. Because I did not have any sense of this being a possibility for New Year's Eve, and still to feel like it was a good New Year's Eve, and still to feel like this is what I wanted, right? So
What you just said there is the answer to the $1 million question, right? That you actually understand now what works for you. And it's funny, like when you're kind of some of the things you were saying is almost like you never knew you had permission to do it this way, kind of thing. At my house, it was a mixed bag. Uh, we had gotten takeout Thursday night, so last night I was just like I wasn't interested in going out to get any food. So I said to my youngest, "Hey, go to the freezer and see if we have any French fries because I know we have cheese and we have um, gravy, so I can make poutine." And nobody had an issue with that. So we had poutine for dinner, um, and then we were watching football. My wife was watching TV in another room, shows that she likes. And then at midnight, none of us were. We were. I was in. My wife and I were in bed. The kids were in bed at midnight. Um, I was watching Star Trek: The Next Generation because I just happened to look up at the clock on my iPad and it's 12:02, and I'm like, "Hey, Happy New Year!" I'm in bed watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. Um, it was just the lazy laying around the house, hanging out. like you, but not as organized with the movies and the food and whatever. We weren't that formal. I think I'm feeling like my family's out of gas with all that. It's like it was just. I think my youngest was having some issues, and so my wife said, "I can't wait for school to start." And that's like, oh, geez, never utter those words, kind of thing. It was just, it was nothing special, and I wonder what that will do to my kids as they get older and progress through the stages of New Year's Eve. Um, in a societal fashion, right? Like you and I probably went through the same trajectory. Like when you're a kid, you watch your parents celebrate it at home. Then as you get older, you go out with your friends. And now we find ourselves in a place where we are more than happy to stay home and hang out at home, have some good food, and literally be in bed right after midnight. If we even make it there, right? Like sometimes there have been years where I've not made it to midnight. I've gone to bed at like 10 or whatever, wake up and it's the new year. Um,
You mentioned this last week, though. I think we landed a mashup. I don't know, or maybe it was when we maybe it was Wait, is this okay? So maybe it was during 12.5. Maybe it was during 12.5. But you and I talked about a little bit about, I think, the sort of the kids' table perspective on holidays, and how, as you're a kid, what your sense of whose holiday it is,
mm,
kind of being sent to bed um while the party's still ongoing, kind of thing. So I think there's an element there of, like, I don't think I ever really completely figured out how I fit into um a New Year's Eve as a kid, because there seemed to be some sort of celebration going on with the adults, or they were going out, or a babysitter was coming over, and we were being kept at a distance from the celebration. So I wasn't building any sort of fluency. It's the kids' table mentality, right? And all you really wanted to know was what was going on at the adult table. I remember this from the Christmas perspective. Um, the kids' table for us was a thing, and me being the oldest cousin, I was aware of what was going on at the adults' table in a way that my younger cousins weren't.
mm,
So I was aware that they were sort of drinking alcohol. I was aware that they were smoking cigarettes. I was aware that they were playing cards. I was aware that they were gambling, right? I was aware that they were swearing in Polish, but like telling like jokes and kind of ribbing each other. That was sort of like the what was going on. And at the same time, then I'd look over at, my cousins, and they're talking about their kids' TV shows. They're talking about when Santa's going to come down the stairs, which was what happened in our house. Santa came down the stairs.
mm.
Santa didn't, so, like, all of a sudden at one point, Santa would just come walking down the stairs from upstairs every year. And it's like, oh, like, you do that for us was like came in through a top. Like, at some point, I can remember going upstairs to see. And I will tell you, the Santa was really, really shrewd in sort of mapping this out, because there was a window open upstairs.
Oh,
So, in my history, there was, or window was open a crack. So it was sort of like there was some shrewdness in how the Santa got in the house, because our house didn't have a chimney. Well, my grandparents' house didn't have a chimney. So Santa was coming in through the window, which, even as I'm saying it, is a pretty, like, that's a, well, I guess some people might have an issue with that, but it was just the way it went, right? But I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time kind of analyzing that. That was just, again, a part of that transition between being at the kids' table and the adult table. But I was aware. I was the first one aware, and I had no one to share that with. I'd be sort of at the table with the kids, and I'd be looking over at the adult table, and then I'd look back at the kids. I'm like, dude, but they didn't see what was going on. Like, they had no fluency to notice. And New Year's Eve was very much the same way. I mean, with my younger sister, there wasn't any sort of like, what do you think? Where do you think they go? Like, what's going on at New Year's Eve? Like, I never had those conversations with her to sort of suss it out. and whether or not that would be part of our future. So trying to discover, what New Year's Eve would be for me. I mean, all through university, I went and started to do that. You go to a bar, buy a ticket, whatever, the band comes on, you're dancing and singing. But I don't have a lot of when I try and when I dig back into my memories of the fun factor.
Mhm.
You're right. Knowing what is fun to me now, I have a far clearer perspective. It can still be momentary. I get it. Like what I could perceive as being fun right now as a 50-year-old is different than the 10 years from now. But what I think has changed is more my confidence to express why it's fun and how it feeds me. I wouldn't have been able to do that as clearly, definitely, when I was in university and sort of chasing the party. I was chasing the party because that's what the pack was doing, right? That's just kind of just what you did. But I didn't really have any threads to say why it is I did it too. It was just because the pack was doing it. And that's what I really enjoy about, like, this is if this is kind of midlife, this is what I appreciate about the wisdom that I now have, is that I can confidently, as I'm telling you, I can tell the story about staying home, being in bed 10 minutes after midnight, but hanging with my family. And I'm gonna choose to believe that anyone listening to that story, even if that wasn't their night and they had a fun time the night before doing whatever party thing they did, they could hear in my voice, they could hear in the story that was a very happy evening. That sounds like it's very satisfying. It didn't feel like I was sort of taking from their experience at all. It's just, a story that made me happy. And it really did. It made me very happy to sit there and crack jokes with my family, to shush each other, like, shh, stop talking. Like, and you realize that you were just talking 2 minutes before, like all the silliness that you sort of play out when you sort of hang with your family. So a very good New Year's Eve. And what's I guess for some people, like I have some colleagues that have just, like, they're just coming back from major holidays. Like I could see their posts and they're rolling in and having their New Year's Eve. But what's interesting, it's just part of a process of celebration in these 2 weeks off, that New Year's Eve is just kind of like one of the spots that they're landing on. So they've had this big, bold kind of a holiday. We traveled once over Christmas, or just around Christmas. We actually went down to Arizona to visit Karen's brother, which was awesome. Little known fact, it's the only time I've ever got to fire a gun. But I'll leave it at that. There's footage out there somewhere. But it was cool. Yeah, it was very cool to go do that. But back to New Year's Eve, there was no kid. There hasn't ever been a kids table, not a formal kids table in our sort of celebrations. We've always done it kind of together. Tried to find a way to do it together.
Cool.
Yeah. Had I been up faster this morning, and I wasn't really up fast enough, I probably would have had some chicken for breakfast.
Nice.
Right? That's a thing, isn't it?
Oh, dude, this is something that works well at my house. The leftovers the next morning.
Yours is tricky though. Yours
Mine's
is tricky, bro. Well, because I think you've shared in the past, like you'll go to bed and then wake up in the morning, and sometime in that 7-hour span, those leftovers are gone.
Yes. So
you're in a different zone than me, because I know those leftovers are still up there. Like,
so yeah, my oldest sometimes has a difficult time minding his own territory, I guess. So we okay, so I guess I'm referring to the kids, not really to me. The kids really enjoy that. Like my youngest, so my wife made spaghetti and meatballs this week. Homemade meatballs, which she never does, but she did, and it was good. Um and there were leftovers, and my wife said, "Okay, this is going in the fridge. Nobody's eating this until tomorrow. This is kind of like lunch tomorrow." And my oldest obeyed, but my youngest, the next morning, I come downstairs and he's like, "Dad, I'm like, what? He goes, can I eat some spaghetti for breakfast? I said, are you serious? He goes, yeah. I said, okay, well, eat half of what's left over because the other half's your brother's. He's like, okay. So it's like 9 o'clock in the morning and he's eating spaghetti and meatballs. But there's just something about they both love this next day, especially if the dinner was really good the night before. Yeah, will it survive the night? Maybe not. If it does, then they're all over it the next morning. And then so that happens. We go through the day. I don't know what happened during the day, and then the next morning comes and he's like, Ben didn't eat his spaghetti and meatballs. Can I have them for breakfast? I'm like, I guess. So then he's having this like huge meal at 9 a.m. type of thing. It's it's something, and everybody in this house is into the leftovers the next morning. I like to do what you do. I like to go in like a couple of hours after the fact and grab what's there. We had pizza last night. We ordered pizza in last night, and the leftovers belong to my wife technically. So we all stayed away from the pizza. And then last night I noticed she was having a snack and it wasn't pizza. So I said to her, hey, the pizza that's in the fridge, is it like free for all kind of thing? She's like, yeah, you can have it. And my mouth started watering. Let me tell you why. Reheating day old pizza in the air fryer is epic. Now I know people have talked about reheating day old pizza in the oven or a toaster oven because it's not like the microwave. It doesn't just give it a shot of. It doesn't just heat it up. It like crisps the crust and the cheese starts to bubble again like it did originally type of thing. And as soon as she said I could have it, my mouth started watering. Dude, I wasn't even hungry. It's just there's pizza. It's New Year's Eve. I wanted to put that pizza in the air fryer and reheat it. So like 3 minutes at 385 from the air fryer, and this pizza was hot as heck and tasted better than when we got it yesterday. And then my little one, he's eyeballing me. He's like, "Is there any left?" I'm like, "Nope, it's all gone. It's all on my plate. It's mine. Back away." And that was the only reason that any of that happened was the television show I was watching. People were eating pizza. I'm like, I think we still have some left over, and if my wife didn't eat it, and lo and behold, I walk into the room and she's having a snack, and it's not pizza. And so in my little brain, it's like, okay, that means the pizza. She's not interested in the pizza anymore. That means it's free. The kids aren't around. It's mine, and that's how.
Fair game.
Yeah, it's fair game. So I totally get what you're saying. In my house, we roll that way. I don't know how you've trained your kids to not eat things that don't belong to them. We're trying. It doesn't seem to work over here. Um, and yeah, the 15-year-old, like we're in bed and he's wide awake, and only God knows what's happening in the kitchen and in the basement. Like we said to him earlier this week, like we're all in trouble here. All our sleep has it's gone out the window in terms of like waking up at reasonable times in the morning for work and school. So I've been harping at them both about guys, like, well, this is before our government made the decision that the kids weren't going to go back until Wednesday. I was like, guys, Monday morning is going to be difficult for everybody, especially you two, considering like you're getting up at like 8:30 in the morning, and my son's school start. Both of my kids' school start before 8:30 in the morning. It's like you guys are going to have a rude awakening when I wake you up Monday morning. And they're just like, Dad, we're on vacation. I'm like, yeah, I get it, but do you have no mindset that you need to recalibrate now? Like in my head, again, there's start the vacation, and your sleep routines are still there. As I work through my vacation, my sleep routines go out the window, but then there's a recalibration the last 3 or 4 days, or at least there's an attempt to recalibrate. These two, there's no attempt. They're like just full bore. We'll pay for it when we wake up for school, and we'll let the days reset us. And I'm like, I guess I get tired thinking of the reset. and so I try to get ahead of it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, I, I, you know how I roll. I've mentioned it. Like I've been keeping the same schedule.
Mhm.
I didn't. There were times where, yes, I did sleep in. I won't say that it wasn't really intentional to sleep in. Like I think I dropped you that polo saying, like I forgot what days we were in, so I sort of got up, started doing my morning, and I forgot to put out the garbage.
Right.
So that result, because of the way that it fell within the weeks, like I had to then load the car up because we had a lot, and I drove to the dump, and that decision cost the family money because you have to pay $10 when you sort of take it to the transfer station. But for the most part, I've kept my schedule. I've been getting up between 5:30. I'll do some reading. I'll do some writing. Check socials. Um, do a few like kind of chore things that can be done like at that early in the morning. So typically I'd be doing something in the basement, kind of adjusting, cleaning, doing stuff down here, just because it's far enough outside of the echo chamber. Like it doesn't make it all the way upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I think that really, and again, my intent is to have a little bit of work, a little bit of play each day, right? And it just depending on what's demanded of me, there are days where more work is demanded of me, so I have less time to kind of have the fun stuff. But it doesn't change my intent to kind of just keep it, even if I'm on vacation. I do try and do a little bit of work. So that it reminds me that even on those weeks where I'm doing work, it's funny. I don't have to remind myself as often when I'm in my work week to do something that's kind of fun. It's not as challenging. But definitely when the rest of the family, like that type of peer pressure is tough. Like the rest of the family's just chilling out. And I, don't think to myself, oh, like when I see them just relaxing, to be the heavy and say, okay, got it. Like okay, I know I'm getting all blurty on this, but like even to sort of enforce the framework of my kids taking care of their chores, and they have chores, right? Cleaning their rooms, taking care of the cat, um, reloading the toilet paper in the house. Like there's stuff for each day. No joke. Like there's stuff for each day that's kind of on their kid list of chores that they're supposed to take care of. This week in particular, everything's been loaded up for the weekend. Like they've left everything to the weekend. So what's funny is that by not chipping away a little bit of it, their chores don't disappear. They just now have to take a full day or like 3 hours in order to get the stuff done. I get this is an artificial deadline to a degree, like clean your room on Friday versus clean your room on the Monday. But we found to have it non-negotiables, and this is a day when you need to take care of it so that it's part of your operating system is better than to kind of do it as well. It looks like it needs a clean. Like to just notice that it needs to clean seems to be far more stressful than trying to sort of make it work on the regular. So, yeah. So yeah, well, I guess it was more me enforcing you got to get out and move. So I told them flat out, you're not using my Xbox unless you get out and go for a walk, go get some movement on. So yeah, that's why I'm going to punish you by trying to be a parent. 2022, baby. 2022.
It's weird. It's always weird for me to say the new year for the first month.
Why's that?
I don't know. I just get used to, in my old age now, sometimes I don't even know what year it is. Like I was writing something a few months ago and I wanted to call it 2020. And I was like, I don't think it's 2020. I actually had to look at my calendar. Like, oh yeah, it's 2021. So if I was having problems with 2021 a month ago, it's going to be hard for me to think 2022. It just is. It always has been for me.
I've got so many external reminders of the time and the date. I don't even care anymore. I think I was in that same space. Yeah, I think I was in that same space. Like that somehow the time and the date mattered. Maybe it does. I think I'm starting to fall more in the I don't know if it does camp. Maybe that's why. I mean, that and that whole like making a thing about the millisecond of change between the 2 years. I guess I have to put it back into that protect the weekend kind of a thing. Like, because like if it's just another moment, then if it's just another moment, then that's why I'm in bed by 12:05, right? Like I don't need to sort of keep cheering on the transition to 2022. I also feel like there was no, for me to sort of some of the planning and plotting and like the strategizing to sort of make sure that that moment means something.
Mm.
I don't know if I'm prepared to do that work anymore. It's funny. I think about yesterday and not all we really did. We did stuff in the morning, but there was a big chunk of our time just sitting as a family watching movies like that as a New Year's Eve activity. I'm thinking like, I would love to do that just on a Saturday. Like everybody picks a movie and then we just sit there, eat takeout food and hang out. Like it's not something that, and heck, I'll even go get the bubbly, like get the sparkling juice for my kids and some champagne or sparkling wine for Karen and I. Just like, here's what we're going to do. We're having fried chicken and sparkling drinks and we're going to watch movies. Let's do it. So, because we'll have the time. We have the time to do it, right? And that's about as hard as I'm going into 2022. Maybe it's just a reminder that everything that we did yesterday, we could do stuff like that anytime. Maybe not as long, but we could come home from work. Someone brings in the takeout, watch 2 movies and crash by 10 o'clock. Like it could be done.
It's just another night. And for me, when I hear you talk like that, it's just about the time to do it. Like having the time to do those things, to sit together or to just lay out, watch a movie, have takeout. It's almost like some people carve out that time like, okay, it's New Year's, I don't have to work, I don't have to da 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 da. It's like, can you try to carve that time out at any other weekend or weeknight? Right? It doesn't even have to be a weekend. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It can be a weeknight. Yeah, I'm over the whole like year change thing. It's just another day. Pet peeve or New Year's resolutions. I think they're BS. You can make a resolution anytime you want. But that's just me and my journey, right? Like if it helps other people, great. Like do what's gonna work for you. I guess I don't like the commercialism part of it. I don't like that you know, exercise machines go on sale now and gym memberships drop now so then they can go up in a month and a half and you may feel shame in trying to cancel it so you don't. So, you know, gyms probably have a third of their members actually come in and work out and they're getting paid. The other 2/3 is just money coming in monthly because of New Year's, So yeah, I'm not I'm not a fan.
I'm not
I'm not
not
a
that
fan.
guy.
I'm not that
I'm,
guy.
I'm not that
I'm
guy.
the other guy.
The other guy.
I also
So
don't always want to be the party pooper either,
why
right?
do you
Like
say that? Why do you say the party pooper? What's
because
the
it's a bit of a party pooper thing to
to
be
what?
like, oh, New Year's is just another day, and
Well, I
it's
think that's you and
sometimes people do it to try to steal away the thunder of other people's enjoyment. Me,
right.
to me, it's not a big deal. That's all. It's been a big deal in the past. It isn't anymore.
There isn't a lot of, I mean, well, no, sorry, it's changed. It's changed. I was about to sort of address my social media network broadly. I've noticed more, like I haven't noticed any, maybe today's the day that it happens. I haven't noticed any one word postings.
Oh, I have. I
Oh,
did
have you?
yesterday, shaking my head. I was just like, here we
Okay.
go. And I'm a big party pooper with that one too. Big party pooper. But if it's gonna work for someone, they're gonna do what works for them. It's not for me. I don't pick one word now. I've got lots of words that come and go,
Yeah.
and that works for me. So
Yeah. Lots of words. I guess maybe so broadly, like my my social media feed. Like I haven't seen. Well, let's just see. I'll call it up just to see. Make myself. I haven't seen any one word postings in my feed at all. Like not a single one. Not yesterday. Not today. So it may pop. It may pop up. So we'll see. But the one word also I think also falls into that whole idea of whatever escape velocity people sort of are gaining by declaring the sort of like the gravity of 2021 into 2022. Like there's a whole slingshot effect, right? That as we transition, these big moments in our life, one of the ways to sort of think about making change. What's that Atomic Habits book? Is it James Clear? Like that's popping up a lot in my feeds, people talking about wanting to read that. I have a one sentence summary for that book. Don't know if I should, because spoiler alert. For me, it's just about the one thing. Do one thing differently. That's it. Do one thing differently, and just you don't even have to assess the outcome. Just do one thing differently every day, every minute. Pick your time frame, whatever, and see what happens as a part of that, and then you'll start to sort of see like change happens, right? And that's the whole thing of the whole habit changing is a little bit like sitting at the kids' table and recognizing that there's something different going on over there at the adult table that is curious to you, and that where you're at the kids' table is no longer curious to you. It's not a like or don't like. It's a little bit more about for me about the curiosity. And so you have a choice. What's the one little change you can make? Well, eat your dinner faster and then maybe go wander around the adults table a little bit. It's funny because there's assumed rules there, right? Like there was never anything. I was never told I couldn't wander around during the meal, right? Eat and wander around. But I think about how I assumed I had to sit there until everybody was done. Now, some families do roll that way. Stay at the table, you don't get excused, whatever. But the kids' table was like forgotten. I think the assumption from the adult side, never got a chance to ask this, but I think now from, as an adult and having my own children, how many of the things that we sort of expect of the kids, we kind of just expect them to absorb the rule by observing it. We don't actually say the words per se. Sometimes we do, maybe more people do, but we don't often. It's like, we sort of will just kind of expect that they bring their dishes to the sink, or they just kind of expect that they use a napkin to wipe their face and not throw it at their brother and sister. Like these are sort of like some of the unsaid norms in the families. So one of the unsaid norms was just the kids had to eat at the little table, the adults would eat at the big table, and then we'd figure out what the next activity was afterwards. Well, when I got in that gray zone of noticing, well, if I just did like one thing different, I could actually go over there and look to see what they're doing. And I did notice they had different food on their table than we got. They had, like I said, the brandy. I think I told you about this. My grandfather making brandy. He had tons of that. So they were drinking the brandy. The deck of cards was on the table. Somebody was smoking while people were eating. Like there were leftover. One of the things my family did, and it was funny, I had a hard time processing this. My family, the adults would do this. The kids didn't. My grandfather would get the unleavened bread, the host, like the Eucharist. They would do Eucharist at Christmas, and all the adults would snap off a piece from this large sheet, and they would each go to each other and wish each other, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and then they would give the Eucharist to each other. And it was mind blowing to me because I was sitting over the table like, what the hell's going on over there? What are they doing? And there's a big hug and a kiss on the cheek and all that kind of stuff. I only got to participate in that 1 year, and I don't remember why things changed. I think a big part of it, sometime in that time frame, my grandfather died, and that changed the whole dynamic of what Christmas looked like. Like he was sort of like a cornerstone in that. Not at Christmas, but he died in that year, so that changed Christmas for everybody as far as my grandparents hosting it. But back to that, where we started this, that idea of like making change during, you sort of imbue New Year's Eve as a powerful, um, like almost like a charm in your life. And like now you're going to make the change. I mean, lots of people have talked about this. You talked about it from the gym memberships. All of us are waiting for our credit card bills to come in. The bill gets paid in January, which in some ways, that's not what we're really looking for. We're not looking to pay bills in January. We're looking to launch and do something differently. But there's a pretty stark reminder that there's a cost. There's a cost for that you have to make it through.
Mhm.
So just doing something different, I think, is a way better way for me to spend my time moving into 2022, and to find moments to really pause just a little bit longer in those moments where I notice that there's an opportunity to do something differently. Like even me saying to you just now, what I did yesterday for New Year's, yes, it was a New Year's activity, but my takeaway is like, I want that to be next Saturday. Now, I don't know if my family will be down for that, because here's the party pooper element of it. If you suggest that you do something that's sort of like a celebration out of sync with things that everyone else want things to be a celebration, then you become a little bit of the weirdo. Like I have friends, actually not friends, but I have people that I know, we're not really close friends anymore, that will do like double birthdays in the year. They'll kind of do a half birthday and then the full birthday. I have friends that have moved their kids' birthdays to a different time of the year because of that, because it's too close to another celebration. I also have other friends that celebrate Christmas in July. Like they'll do a second Christmas. So you start moving around your New Year's Eve celebration. Well, maybe here's what the way you sell it is that it's not a New Year celebration. It's just a way to have fun. So the thing that we did yesterday, where we got together as the fam and we sat and we did fried chicken and movies, like that sounds like a pretty good Saturday. Heck, it sounds like a pretty good Tuesday night if you can make it happen. So maybe that's what the thing for me moving forward this year is because it's nothing new. There's nothing new that I'm trying to add or take away apart from something that I can do as an individual, which is just notice that opportunity. This could also be midlife crisis talking, like, ooh, fewer years ahead than there are behind me. So I got to make sure I'm making the most of every moment. I don't know. I'm not a big habit changer. I find like the problem with me is that I just add new habits. I actually don't get rid of any. I don't get rid of any habits. I just keep adding another one, and they compete for brain space and time in the day. Are you a better habit adder or a habit remover?
You got me thinking about that now. I'm not 100% sure.
It's what makes me confusing to my family.
There are some I really should get rid of.
We can say that. We can say that for sure. It's part of it is the skill set of it. Maybe the skill set of it. Like, are you better at stopping doing one little things or better at adding one little things? Which for me is kind of like the heart of habit management, let's say. For
That's
me,
a really
adding.
good. You're good at adding.
Yeah, I love novelty. Like I'll add it in and out, and then it just kind of die. I guess for me, I don't actively remove. I just let it die on the tree.
Okay, I
Die on
guess
the vine, yeah.
I'm good at adding and dying. I'm good at that.
Yeah.
I'm good at adding things, they die, but I've got some bad ones that just continue that I really should remove, but don't. And then I believe they serve some purpose, right? You and I have talked about this. We do things that serve a purpose, whether it's positive or negative. We get used to that, and then it's tough to break those habits.
When you're told to, it's funny, when someone else notices it. Maybe that's well, I don't know. I'm trying to ease into that sort of like state of my relationships where people will actually mention to me my habits. It bursts a really interesting bubble, right? Having people talk to you directly about your habits and having a bridge there for someone to walk across to ask you about your habits. And how do you do that in, like, what's the respectful, or like what's the criteria for having those conversations? Because it's in the not talking about it at all that problems kind of pop up, right? You sort
Mhm.
of, you're 10 years into doing a thing and someone's like, oh yeah, you've been doing that forever. You're like, what kept you from mentioning that? It's a little bit like I think in the on ramp we were talking about how um there are times when there are times where, I feel like I get the sense like my personality crashes other people's creative process. So they'll ask me a question about it, and then I go off on detail, and then I leave them kind of more rattled than actually um, realized. Like I don't help them understand themselves. I'm probably laying down a laundry list of why I wouldn't do it that way.
Mm.
Um, that's a really bad habit. That's a really bad habit. Um, because I find it doesn't allow, sometimes I don't even realize the conversations that I don't get to have after that because people just won't talk to me. Karen and I were talking about this the other day. Our next door neighbor, way back in the day, their oldest now is I don't know if she's a doctor or a therapist, but she's gone into medicine, something. Um, and she came over. It was like, I think she was in grade 12, and she called the house one day and she's like, hey, can I come over? I just need some help with an essay. And Karen and I both, like, I think overwhelmed her, like just with the feedback, like it didn't help. And she was like, oh, okay, thanks, yeah, appreciate that. And she never talked to us again, like ever again, like for the rest of the remainder of the school year. Like I think when I think back, like even kind of like where our driveways are side by side,
Mhm.
probably even avoided us like on the driveway, like, oh, those were those two crazy teachers that just, so many rules. I just wanted something simple, a simple response about the framing of this essay that she was writing. Um, so that's a habit, I guess, that I could be more mindful about. But again, noticing it is helpful. I wish more people. I wish because here's the thing: I can't expect someone to call me out if I'm not building a relationship or offering up that safety to be able to call me out. So maybe that's where I need to focus, opening myself up more to the possibility that someone creating opportunity. Maybe this means I need to do more foolish things. I
Mm.
do so many foolish things that someone inevitably will have to comment on it and say, Clough, you really need to stop. Those habits are just not working. They're not working for you, Clough. Here's the true test of whether or not I'll absorb the date.
Your art.
January 1st, 2022. You know what a nice little surprise was? It's kind of
What's
funny.
that? Sure.
Yeah, the Apple Watch last night, I just checked it before bed and I sort of tapped the screen and it had fireworks on it.
Oh, it's nice.
It's that little celebration, yeah.
I'm
It's
sure
kind of cool.
Tesla cars did something too.
I've heard about these things. Sometimes their display screen or whatever, like there's something that um
My buddy
there's some
posted on socials the other day, I guess Christmas, his Tesla was doing this like Christmas thing. The light, it was playing music, Christmas music, and the lights were flashing red and green, and the windows were opening and closing. It was like a Christmas Easter egg thing.
it's
I don't like it when my car is smarter than I am.
well, I was about to say there is a frightening element of that, isn't there? There's a frightening element that can be like that's the whole there's more than enough posts online about people being able to kind of low jack your your vehicle, being able to sort of do something with the coding and the CPU on your vehicle. Um, and then you just kind of you look at it, you're like, oh, but that's cute when it's mine, when it's
Yeah,
coming from when it's the mothership, right?
it's it scares me a little bit that there are people at Tesla whose job is to probably create these Easter eggs. Like they're sitting around having a candy bar saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool on Easter if your car did this?" Like that, or on Martin Luther Day, your car did this. Like just whacked stuff.
Push out the code. Just push out the
Yeah,
code.
push out the code. So, is the art ready for us to view this
Yeah, you
morning?
could check it.
Decoded glue stick, invisible, washable, avoidable, reversible, habit adhesive. Nice. I like the colors. I noticed you made a small glue stick too. You didn't make one of those jumbo ones.
Yeah, it's got I guess pocket size. Maybe I should have put hideable. I could have put hideable in there. That glue stick, that habit glue stick. What makes it stick?
Right.
What makes it stick? So
Go ahead.
as far as I was just gonna say, as far as the Saturday, the first Saturday. Okay, how about this? The last thing I'll put to you. I'm curious. Does today feel more like a Saturday from before? Like, does it feel actually like a Saturday, or does it feel like the still part of our December break? I was thinking about that as I was sort of waking up this morning. I was like, does it feel? It's kind of I don't have a great way to say it, but does it feel like? Does it feel like one of the weekends leading up to the break? Because we just had many days of differentiated living. But today we're back to Saturday. Like, we're back to today's Saturday. And as soon as we place that, Saturday means that tomorrow's Sunday. And then it also then means that at some point it's Monday. So what does today feel like to you?
It certainly does not feel like a regular Saturday. It does not feel like a ramp up to the weekend. It feels like a ramp down of my break.
Okay.
So it doesn't feel like Saturday to me. In fact, I see it as, oh, geez, I only have 2 more days of the rest and relaxation that I've become accustomed to over the last 2 weeks. Because really, this break has been a complete reset for me.
Mm-hmm.
Complete reset with no feelings of guilt about not doing certain things or going to certain places. It's literally just been 2 weeks of hibernation. And today, it is a Saturday today, but it just feels like, oh, I only have 2 more days left of my hibernation. I need to come out, wear real clothes again, and like have to talk to people and have to go places and do things that I didn't do over the last 2 weeks. That's what it feels like to me.
The someone in my feed, the Modest Teacher Twitter feed, what got me thinking about this is they posted up, thank God it's Saturday. Now, part of that, I don't have a measure of what sort of is feeding into that. This person, I don't know even for sure. I don't know enough about them to know whether or not they actually are a teacher. They're followed by other people in EDU. I don't know if that's somehow a comment on, the news feeds being down. Like, I don't know what the source code for that statement is, but it got me thinking about, just as a named day, how does Saturday sort of feel? It's a very intense, we're coming out of like a little bit of that where reality is kind of like, there's a reality. Well, we talked about this, I think, last week, just the idea that even though we were on a 2-week break, not everyone's a teacher. So you go out and there's other people living their life, working, interacting. There's a whole world out there that exists outside our EDU bubble. And I think it's the transition, that feel of transition, that can feel like a little bit stunning. over the summer, we've got all the physiological responses of, people start to have school dreams. They start to have, some anxiety about organization, all that kind of stuff that happens in the last week of August. But you get sort of like, you have it, I think because we have the 8 weeks over the summer, you have about a week's worth of those kind of transitional ideas, the thinking, the lack of sleep, is the car gassed up? Are the backpacks ready? All that kind of stuff. We're getting a micro dose of it coming out of this 2-week stretch. And part of that is acknowledging the fact that, yes, in fact, today is Saturday. And it's a Saturday not like last Saturday, because this Saturday means in 2 days, people are back in their EDU spaces. And it definitely feels different. But just to officially name the day is what makes it kind of interesting. Today is back to Saturday that exists in a 7-day frame, which means that it is 2 days away from being back at school, whatever people's school version is. So.
Before we go, I'd just like to say 2 thumbs up to our provincial government, who again decide at the last minute to let education staff, families, and students know exactly what's happening when we return to school. I love it. They've been consistent at letting us know at the last minute what they would like from us.
We called this. We claimed it at some point. We can, any of our listeners can go and sort of find that index, that conversation. But we talked about this, like what the next thing's going to be. And I think we both landed into the space of the new conversation is, what's it like to live with COVID? Like, we're not in a sort of like prophylactic stage anymore. Like, we're not trying to keep it away from ourselves. It's now the living with it and suck it up, buttercup. Like, it is I'm getting that sort of feel, right?
My buddy called it we're in the phase of you're on your own phase with COVID.
Yeah. Dystopian novels have been based on this moment, right?
Yeah, it's big time. Big time.
This was the moment, right? So we move forward with the tools that we got.
They were okay with people dying before. Now it's a matter of, hey, just let's go back to normal. We got to make money. We got to roll the way we have always done it. People are going to die. It's like they're tired of trying to find other ways to tell us people are going to die and we don't care. Now it's like the disguise for that is gone. It's like, no, people are going to die. Just get back to work. We've been doing this for 2 years. We're tired. Just go back to work. People are going to die. People are going to get sick. We don't need you to report it anymore. Just if you're not feeling well, just stay home for 5 days. You don't have to do the 10 days anymore because it's costing us a lot of money. So just 5 days now.
I have the memories of like how hard people were pushing back on Trump's idiocy, talking about, well, the only reason that we have more cases is because we're testing, and trying to sort of move through that logic. You're like, wait, what? Yeah, okay. So we see more cases because we now have a tool to see those cases, but those cases are still out there, even if we don't happen to see it. But you're saying the problem is that, like, you're making some flawed connection between people being sick and the fact that we're noticing that they're sick, and that's the problem. Our government is moving into that exact same space. Like, they're in that exact same space that they've now. So just to give a context, right around my house, you've seen we have a hospital very close to my house.
Yes.
Right across the street from the hospital was the PCR testing space, the COVID testing space. And up to yesterday, there was nobody there. For the last 2 weeks, the lineup's been down the street. So as of yesterday, they're no longer having the data about the actual number of people that are sick out there. So we're officially not going to look at data and infection rates in order to justify that people have to go back to work. And somebody says, but there's a lot of people infected with COVID out there. Probably one of the responses is like, well, we don't have the data to support that. I'm like, we know, because you stopped doing testing, as opposed to people that are, I think it's chronically ill, immunosuppressed. Like, there's criteria that you have to meet. And then it kind of circles back to, well, how do you get your PCR test in order to go back to work? So you're telling us to go back to work, but workplaces are saying you have to have a PCR test.
They're going to have
Like
to change that because now
yeah,
we're not allowed to have a PCR test.
I
So,
know
yeah, so they're going to have to, protocols are changing to fit the
something's going to happen.
go back to work. We know people are going to die. It's okay. So
My
workplaces, stop asking your employees for a PCR test because we're not going to let them have one.
yeah, or and there's not going to be the staff to fill. I mean, we already
Mhm.
ran into this prior to the December break
There
that
are
there
not
were
enough
some schools.
teachers to do the job, so just
Yeah,
go to work sick.
well, now they're talking about condensing cohorts.
Yes.
We also know, I don't know if your board, my board had this, like superintendents were going back into schools to support schools. Like superintendents were going in, consultants were going in to schools to support school-based activities. Principals were teaching classes before we left for the break. It was quite it was a regular occurrence to see one of my admin walking to a class to cover a class. So I think I mean, I'm biased. I have an administrator in the family, but I know like what they're moving into on Monday is definitely going to be a different flavor of hell from whatever I perceive to be my challenges in working with my kids. Right,
Hmm. Hmm.
those logistical and bureaucratic uh, tasks that they're going to have to take care of in order to sort of launch Monday and Tuesday. It's a Saturday. It's officially a Saturday. There's no more space between the work and us, right? Apart from, I am happy though we got groceries yesterday, so I don't have to pick up groceries. We admitted though we got groceries on Friday. We picked it up yesterday morning, which kind of sets up an interesting kind of weird shift, which means we probably won't make it through the full week next week
Mm.
without having to pick something up. But we just figured, screw it, go get groceries, get them done.
I don't mean to belabor this, but how excited are your kids that they don't have to go to school until Wednesday? Or does it not really matter to
They're
them?
nonplussed. My kids both have said they want to be in school. They both,
Mm.
both said they want to be there with their friends. They are concerned about being at home. My son is a little bit more. So my son is more like, I can learn at school. I can learn online. I can do either. So my daughter's in her grade 8 year. So there's that conversation. Her concern goes right to the what if. She doesn't stay very long in what is. She goes right to what if we don't have a proper wrap up to the school year.
Mm.
So um others have moved through it. We'll just move through it as we do on the daily basis. Where are we at now? Where are we at now?
I'm
So
sure Dougie will say something in June, no matter what's happening. Oh, in June, he's going to be like, well, because the election's in June. So
it is.
rolling up to June, I'm sure he's going to be he's going to be, it's going to be fun to watch him and his team navigate between now and June. Uh,
Uh,
I told you there was only one way he's getting my vote, and that's Buck a Burger program. If he can pull that off, I think I'm in. He can have my vote. But
the great thing is that you might not even have to necessarily vote, and you could still get the Bucker Burger deal. Like that's right. It could happen, and you could still honor your whatever your truth is. But if it is a truth for you to get, but what would that Buck Burger be any good? Right?
that's part of the fun of all of this is that even Buck a Beer, the beer was going to be garbage, and
Yeah,
nobody was on board because they couldn't make the beer for that and sell it and make a profit at a buck. So, which made me
simpler
laugh
times,
because it's
eh?
like he didn't even talk to anybody about it because all the breweries were like, especially the microbreweries were like, we can't do that. We could barely make ends meet with the beer we're making now. And Clown Face wants us to sell it for a buck.
Clown face. I like that clown face. Yeah,
I've got other things to call them, but I can't do it on the podcast. So, well, I don't want to do it on the podcast. But anyway, it's just gong show. We're, in my opinion, we're at the, yeah, wear the mask. At least wear the mask, but we don't want the numbers anymore. We don't
it's
care.
true.
It costs too much money. We've spent a lot of money, and they haven't. They've gotten money and not spent it on any of this, but whatever. Um, I just really hope people wake up and are like, no, dude, you're not getting another term.
It's the waking up on Friday, bro. We talked about that before. Waking up on Friday, like all of a sudden, people are people are noticing, finally noticing some of the sort of like the almost that sort of like in group thinking that is just not it's not that we've now I think there's now I feel like there's more adults that are not a part of EDU that are noticing, and not even necessarily parents, but there's more people that don't have a stake in the game right now noticing the weirdness that's coming from the Ford government. And
Hmm.
that works well for people that don't want his team to have another term.
Hmm.
I don't know if it'll translate to voting against, because that's that next step. Like, are people that are actually pissed off going to vote against him? Or are they just now realizing that they're pissed off? Because sometimes it
Hmm.
takes a few more, like, there's some time. I'll go back to the kids' table. It took a long time for me when I noticed that there was something more interesting going on at the kids' table for me to actually get up and start walking around to see what that was. I
Hmm.
sat in that moment a long time, realizing that I wasn't really the kid anymore, but I wasn't the adult either. So if people right now are just noticing that they're kind of pissed off at Ford, it could take another turn before they realize that, yeah, we're officially no longer supporting this guy.
Geez, I really hope that doesn't happen. But
It's a sad
we,
truth, but I think that's kind of how these things kind of
everybody's
flow.
free to vote for that's democracy, right? But
Hmm.
man, what a gong show.
Yep.
A buddy of mine said to me before the break, I was in a school and he said to me, "You know what I've realized about all this politics stuff, Roland?" I said, "What?" He goes, those people don't know any more than I know. Like, it's not like politicians are these super genius types that are in the know. Like, he goes, they're just like me, except we decided that they would represent the rest of us.
Yeah.
But I know as much as they know, and I know where to go to get information if I need it." And I was like, just nodding my head, like, yeah, well, the Ford government especially just seems like a bunch of dudes and gals hanging around. We have scientists who inform them, and they are like, well, that's going to cost money, so we're not doing that. And you can't
Yeah.
say that because that's going to cost us money. We don't want to spend any money. And then there are all the folks that are like, liberals spend too much and yada yada yada. Okay, fine, fine, fine. But we're in a pandemic. We're trying to save life. We're trying to get through this, and it's not a time for penny pinchers. It's a time for people to come together and to like do what's right to make sure people survive this thing. And when you don't, I'm just happy that the truth's finally coming out. They just don't care. People, we got businesses that they need to operate, they need to run. We can't do that if we can only let five people in at a time because of whatever. And people fighting over wearing masks and not wearing masks. I hate wearing a mask, but I understand. And here's another thing. I had this great conversation with someone. So everybody's got an opinion. And here's mine. If you're leading a group or an organization, in my opinion, it is right to err on the side of caution because you are responsible for all these people and their livelihood and their health. And when you make decisions that are not intended to be good for everyone, then you're a danger because you're leading a group of people who are listening to you and following you because you're the leader, and they're leading you down a path where you could be harmed. Like, I don't believe. I've had people say to me, well, so and so shouldn't do that, I want to do it this way. And I said, well, you're not running the show. And I'm not talking about the government, I'm talking about micro organizations and groups. I say, this person's responsible for the health of all of us. And you want them to make rash decisions? No, they need to be calculated. They need to think of the lowest common denominator so we all survive this. It's not the, only the strong survive. If that's the way you're thinking, then you shouldn't be leading because you're going to harm people. And I think when you're in a leadership role, you have to do your best to look at what will harm people the least. That's just my perspective.
I think and I think that is what's happening, but to a very um creepy level, because there's something that, like, nobody wants anyone to die from COVID. But before, that's we had, it was a binary. You either when it came to COVID, you either didn't have it and you lived, or you caught it and you died. That's kind of where we started, I think, with our pandemic philosophy. That was the thing. So we're and then we sort of move through these stages of, is it mysterious? Like, how is it transmitted? And we sort of work through protocol after protocol after protocol, refinement after refinement. And sometimes it felt like we were right in step and doing the right thing. And then other times it felt like, why are we even doing this? Because then we start to see how disjointed the application of protocols were. I think throughout this, though, the fact that we got to a space where people were surviving COVID, but there wasn't a platform initially that was comfortable for people to speak to that in a broad sense, because I think that it created a weird kind of zero sum kind of thinking that if we started to talk about hope, that then that hope would just be dashed. And people have posted stuff up like that. I have seen, okay, I'll backtrack a little bit. I have seen people posting up hope as kind of like their word moving into 2022. But that hope is dual edged, because the governments were able to capitalize on that hope. So once we started to have, I think societies had conversations around survival rates, the government was able to pivot to using that information about survival rates to justify return to works. And I think that's it's a terrible way to continue to like, it's terrible, the idea that we've commodified the hope in that way and weaponized it. The hope has been weaponized to a degree, because now it's like, it's hard to have the conversation. It's hard to have a conversation about your own little private pandemic and how terrible it's been for you, because there are stories now about, well, but now there's a chance that you'll survive. Like, it sort of undervalues the toll of having to sort of go through it, because there's survivor numbers now. And that, I think, in some ways has been the leading edge of why we now the government's comfortable with sending us back to work and even introducing that conversation, because they've flipped our hope back at us and saying, it's not that we're good now, it's just that it's in that harm reduction phase. And because people are surviving, we have been successful. We are officially can claim some success of protecting people, because we have survivors now. And our ICU, the failure of our ICU stations is no longer the question, right? We're no longer talking about ICUs being overwhelmed. I don't know if we're talking about ICUs being any more effective, but it's just, they've weaponized hope. And that's a true marketing victory for the government, and for people not to be sort of like addressing it as such, that they've used hope to basically flip the script and tell us that it's okay to be back at work, and written and looked for the science to justify it.
Craziness, Clough.
Did you see that one thread from I don't know what his name is. I'd have to go back to, I think I pushed it out as a perfect post, but it was the dude that put together how he perceived the marketing, the PR people. I just want to say his name because it was really, Jerry, I'm going to guess it's Jerry Dequetteville, could be, at JDEQ. And the initial post is, I've been around the block more than a few times. I've worked with multiple ministers of education. I've never seen spin the way I do from this minister. I can imagine the conversation when writing the guidance memo to boards. And then there's just every single thing is just, let's use the word guidance as often as possible so people think it actually provides some. Make it confusing and add in lots of verbiage so people don't see the actual message, which is keep schools open no matter what, so parents can go to work. And it just goes, he sort of, it's not a debunk. He's just sort of showing the operating system for the marketing scheme right now. But as soon as I read that, I'm like, that's what they've done. They've weaponized hope. I would encourage anyone, and I think I'll flip it to you if you're interested, but it's a really good string um
He's
about
basically decoding it.
he's totally decoding it and pulling it apart, saying, this is how we've been convinced. This was the recipe. This is how it's happened. And looking at the current statements and why we don't even give it a second thought.
I,
What have you to say?
yeah, my perspective is that they just keep changing the rules to make it so that COVID is not a problem anymore,
Yeah,
even though it is. They just keep changing the rules so that it's easier for people to be back at work. It's easier for kids to go to school and not feel well, because that's an age old thing. Kids have always gone to school not feeling well,
it's
age
true.
old. And then now with COVID, it was like, no, 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 we really have to make sure you're not here, to the point where the principal's involved, right? Like the principal's like checking your temperature and calling your parents saying, yeah, you got to come pick them up because of this rule, this rule, and this rule. Now those rules are gone. So kids will be back at school not feeling well and passing COVID around like crazy. And teachers will get it and they'll be passing around like crazy too. So
This
why are we
whole
even wearing masks anymore? Like,
because the conversation isn't around wellness. It's about there's no broader understanding of wellness. Because one of the truths is, if you're sick, stay home. Like, I think that's a work truth. If you're sick, stay home. Now, whether or not a family can activate that,
hmm hmm
whether or not a worker can activate that, but I
even
think that's a universal. If you're not feeling well, don't go out into public where you're going to contribute to somebody else's. Like, that's the reverse of sympathy. It's the opposite of sympathy. That's cruelty. You know that you're sick enough. But here's the thing: just because that's the reverse of cruelty or sympathy doesn't mean that people have access to the rational action of not doing it. If you do, and it's belief systems. If you do believe that by not working a day you could lose your job, that's reality. If you
mhm.
do believe you won't be able to get groceries, right? If you do believe that you're going to be penalized in some way, that's reality. Whether it happens or not, it doesn't matter, because the reality that you perceive changes your behavior, not the actual reality. It's usually the perception of what's going on that changes the behavior. That sort of, the actual can be as well, but usually it's the anxiety of what if. So I can't stay home. I can't keep my kids home. I can't do all these sort of things. You can, but you just might not be able to sort of recover from the outcomes of that decision. Right. So the one thing about COVID that hasn't done is it hasn't improved our understanding of personal wellness. People are reliant on the protocols, because I had several conversations around that in the beginning, saying, okay, your child is sniffling. Da, da, da. Well, we did the board protocol and they were clear then. Okay. And you kind of just go, okay, I guess the kid stays at school then.
Mm.
Now, whether it's COVID or something else, the kid is still dropping snot all over their table and their mask is completely soaking wet. So just keep providing another mask to keep the mask dry. And this is where it gets weird, right? Because the essence is the prophylactic nature, just to put another mask on the kid, because what's important is that the mask is dry, not that the kid is making it wet. If we focus on the fact that the kid is making the mask wet in the first place, then we say the kid's sick, they got to go home. If we make it about the mask being dry, well, we have a full supply of masks over here. Just keep giving them another mask, keep giving them another mask, keep going. So it's the wrong end of wellness that we've been focused on, I think.
Yes. Another a tweet that I saw that caught my attention was around how come this whole time we've not been hearing about exercise, eating better, taking better care of yourself. It goes along the same lines as what you're saying about wellness. How come there hasn't been a message of taking care of yourself? People are asking some good questions, and I guess I wasn't paying attention before, but I am now. I'm paying attention now. Um, you know, I'm for the science, but I feel like it's being twisted, manipulated. I feel like it's being twisted, manipulated because money is the ultimate goal. It's not about saving people. It's not about making sure people are okay. Parents can take care of their kids. It's not about any of that. It's about money. And
Mhm.
I would have more respect for people to just come out and say it. Like, hey, teachers, we got to send you back in no matter what because parents have to work. Okay, then give me a bubble suit or something. Like, take care of me so that I can continue to help your economy run. But they won't say that. They
Well, it
call us
also,
lazy. They tell us
yeah,
we don't want to work. Dude, I
again,
want to work.
but
Just
dude, you're not in the right conversation there. This is where you're speaking a different language, because it's not about, it's about now living with COVID. And if we pursue that, that means like it's okay if you get infected because we have another mask to give you. Like that's like giving the kid the dry mask because they're snotty is like where you and I are at as workers is just an extension of that mindset.
mhm.
The government is okay with everybody being sick with COVID for whatever reason, but that's where it is. I think we're now officially, philosophically speaking, they've shifted to a reality that not everybody has. Their reality is people being infected with COVID is inevitable. So we're now going to we're going to deal with we're not going to mitigate that reality anymore. We're not going to argue with that reality. It's a very almost like it's the dark side of stoicism. We're not going to argue with that reality because we now accepted it as reality, even if others haven't. But the individuals that are running the government, if they've accepted that as reality, the only path out of that reality is to vote them out, because everything is going to be filtered through that reality. So everything between now and April, May, or June, whenever the election is, will be filtered through that reality. It'll be interesting to notice our opportunities to not think in tune with their reality as we go along the ways, because there's going to be a whole lot of stuff. Like, I really don't know how they're going to navigate. I really don't know how they're going to navigate the outcomes of these decisions and keep it aligned with them being reelected. Like that's the next thing to watch for, right? Forget any new Marvel movie. This is going to be the thing to watch moving forward. Like, how do they spin this particular? It's the exact. In some ways, it's a not the exact. It's a similar. It's a similar white knuckle, hold your breath kind of a moment that I think many people were feeling during the last American election. That despite everything that Trump had done, people were still holding their breath like, yeah, but like Biden, what if? Like maybe Biden can't beat this guy. Maybe he can't. And right up until, and even afterwards, Trump's still hanging on, like with claws and questioning it and everything and legislation, everything that he was still fighting. You know, do we have the tenacity and energy to stay on point with our belief systems, much like how Biden did? Do we have the tenacity and energy to sort of fight in a way that we're representing our interests, but not becoming Trump, right? Like not becoming that. And I think moving forward, there's an equal chance that they can get another term. That's the reality of politics, and I won't argue that. You know, the roles that we play leading up to that to keep that from happening, that's the story to watch. Because what they've done so far, they no longer get to claim any sort of superhero badges on their chest for navigating COVID and all the protocols. There's like they're now officially a government that's had to sort of govern. And one of the things that they just had to manage is COVID as well as everything else. So there's no longer any sort of like, there's no polish left on that. Like, we're doing pretty good as a government. I don't think anyone's going to credit them with that, because now there's bigger picture items like the economy, healthcare, like there's other things that are sort of being that they've had to pay attention to, and not just survival and recovery. But there are still many people that are in survival and recovery. Is there enough people in survival and recovery that they're going to say, yeah, you mistreated me, so I'm not going to vote you in? Are there ones that recovered and thought, thank God Ford was in control because I wouldn't have survived this any other way? And the last thing I'll just put on this, and this happens time and time again, is people in EDU believing that everyone's a teacher. So even individuals that are parents, even individuals that are teachers, we don't know if they're going to vote in step with what, you and I are talking about right now. We have no assurance.
Mm-hmm.
You and I right now in the pod, there's no assurance that something within this could trip one of us to vote for Ford. Not for sure. Not 100%. So watching for I don't know. I'm as curious to see how they spin out of this as I am to see Doctor Strange 2, the Multiverse of Madness. Ford and Lecce, the Multiverse of Madness. Probably gonna be the same movie. Maybe. Yeah, breathe that one out.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year 2022, yo.
Season 5, episode 14 of the Decoded Podcast.
It is.
Until next week. Or
Party
the next
poop until next week.
Party poop until next week. I love it. Have a good one.
Ciao, man.